They're fast, they're cheap, and they look shockingly familiar. Chinese motorcycles are showing up everywhere, some with names you've never heard of, others riding just a little too close to the brands you grew up trusting. And let's be honest, if you squint at a CF Moto or a Lifan long enough, you might just mistake it for a BMW GS or a KTM Duke till you see the price tag and rub your eyes. So today we're breaking down the rise of Chinese motorcycles, how they're shaking up the market and asking the big question, are these budget-friendly knockoffs raising the bar or quietly breaking it? Let's find out. The copycat problem, when inspired by, gets awkward. You don't have to be a motorcycle nerd to notice it. That new Chinese adventure bike kind of looks like a BMW GS. That Street Fighter could pass for a baby Triumph. The reason? Chinese manufacturers have a habit of borrowing design language, sometimes to the point where it's hard to tell if you're looking at a new model or a Photoshop prank. Imitation isn't new in the motorcycle world. The Japanese brands faced the same accusations in the 60s until they proved they could out-engineer the originals. But with Chinese bikes, there's a twist. They're not just mimicking, they're doing it cheap. Very cheap. A bike that looks like a 12,000-pound Triumph might cost 4,000 pounds out the door. Add some sharp angles, LED headlights, and a TFT dash, you got a recipe for showroom temptation. The danger? When innovation gets undercut by imitation, the industry starts playing defense instead of pushing forward. R&D versus ROI, the unfair advantage. Let's talk numbers, and not the horsepower kind. Developing a new motorcycle from the ground up takes years and millions in research, prototyping, crash testing, emissions compliance, and global certifications. Brands like Honda, KTM, and Yamaha spend big because innovation isn't cheap. Every new frame, engine, and tech features a gamble, one that hopefully pays off with sales and brand loyalty. Now enter the Chinese brands. Many skip the R&D altogether and reverse engineer existing bikes. They don't need wind tunnels or racing teams, they just need a caliper, a camera, and a CAD program. The result? Bikes that look, feel, and ride kind of like the originals, but cost half as much to make. It's not illegal in many cases, it's just frustrating for the companies doing the hard work. Why invest in traction control algorithms when you can copy someone else's dashboard and drop the price? In the long run, this could choke off innovation across the board, because when copycats outsell creators, the incentive to build something new disappears. Quality control, still a dice roll. Not all Chinese motorcycles are junk. Brands like CF Moto and Benelli, now Chinese-owned, have proven they can build reliable, even impressive machines. But here's the truth. Quality control across the Chinese motorcycle sector is still wildly inconsistent. One batch might be flawless, the next, bolts shearing off at 40 miles per hour and plastics warping in the sun. That's because many of these companies don't operate with the same global accountability or dealer support network as established Japanese or European brands. You might get a great deal on a $3,000 adventure bike, but what happens when a proprietary sensor fails or the wiring loom starts melting? Good luck finding a replacement part or someone trained to fix it. This unpredictability breeds distrust, and it affects the entire market. Riders start lumping everything under the same made in China equals sketchy umbrella, even as some brands try to raise the bar. Until the average quality matches the price point, cheap Chinese bikes will always carry that invisible asterisk. Buy at your own risk. The middleweight revolution. Good or dangerous? Here's where things get complicated. For years, riders have begged for more affordable, well-spec'd middleweight bikes. Not everyone wants a $20,000 liter machine or a buzzy 300cc beginner bike. Chinese brands saw that gap and moved in fast. Suddenly, you got 400cc twins with TFT displays, ABS, and fuel injection for under $5,000. And they're not terrible. In fact, some are shockingly decent. That puts pressure on legacy brands who are now scrambling to figure out how to match those specs without slashing their margins. It's like showing up to a knife fight and your opponent brought 40 knives all on sale. So is this good for consumers? Yes and no. Cheaper bikes mean more people can afford to ride, but if those low prices kill off the brands doing real innovation, we all lose. Because at the end of the day, nobody dreams of someday owning a generic 400cc twin. They dream of a Ducati, a Triumph, or a KTM. And if those companies go broke fighting knockoffs, what are we left with? The imitation problem. When is it too much? Let's get real. There's copying and then there's cloning. Some Chinese manufacturers don't just draw inspiration from popular bikes, they practically Xerox them. We're talking GS lookalikes, multi-strata wannabes, and even fake Triumph badges slapped on knockoff tanks. It's bold, it's legal in many places, and it's wildly controversial. Oscar Wilde once said, Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness. But when imitation becomes a business model, it starts to feel like theft. While BMW spends millions on design, safety testing, and emissions compliance, some factory in Chongqing pumps out a copycat with 70% of the performance at 30% of the price and zero shame. This doesn't just hurt brand prestige, it erodes consumer trust. You start to wonder, wait, is that a real Ducati? And if every brand gets copied into obscurity, the whole motorcycle landscape becomes a sea of lookalikes, familiar shells with nothing original underneath. That's not flattery anymore, that's creative bankruptcy. Intellectual property, what's that? Here's where things get a little shady. In most Western countries, intellectual property law is taken seriously. Patents, trademarks, and copyrights protect companies from having their ideas stolen. But in China, let's just say enforcement is more optional. That's how you end up with bikes that look suspiciously like the Yamaha R6, KTM Duke, or Ducati Scrambler, right down to the paint scheme. And while some brands have tried to take legal action, most of those battles go nowhere. The legal costs are high, enforcement is slow, and by the time a court gets involved, a dozen new clones have already hit the streets. This is one reason why major manufacturers are hesitant to build factories or partnerships in China. They're afraid of feeding the machine that's undercutting them. Until global IP laws are enforced more evenly, the playing field won't be level, and the brands playing fair will keep losing ground to the ones who cheat with a smile. The good apples, brands like CF Moto. Now, before we throw every Chinese brand under the bus, let's talk about exceptions. Because not all Chinese manufacturers are cutting corners and copying catalogs. Some are actually earning respect. Leading the charge is CF Moto. Instead of pumping out knockoffs, CF Moto has been building its own motorcycles, partnering with KTM and producing bikes that hold up under scrutiny. Take the CF Moto 800 MT, for example. It's built on KTM's LC8C engine platform, comes loaded with features, and costs thousands less than its European competition. It's not just decent, it's impressive. And more importantly, it's original. CF Moto isn't trying to fool anyone into thinking it's a BMW. It's trying to become a CF Moto. That matters because it shows that Chinese brands can create, innovate, and compete honestly. If more manufacturers follow this path, we might be looking at the start of a new chapter, not the downfall of the industry. But the question remains, will CF Moto become the rule or stay the exception? Flooding the market, the Walmartification of motorcycles. Here's the bigger problem, volume. Chinese manufacturers are flooding the market with ultra-cheap bikes, and it's hard to resist a brand new 250cc sport bike for 2,000 pounds when a used Japanese one costs twice as much. These bikes are accessible, often come with modern features and look the part, but they come with a hidden cost. Many of these machines are built with subpar materials, lack dealer support, and suffer from poor parts availability. The bargain bin 125cc Scrambler might look cool on TikTok, but when it breaks, good luck finding someone who knows how to fix it or even get you a new clutch cable. The race to the bottom drags everyone down. Established brands are forced to either lower their standards to compete or risk losing sales to machines that aren't built to last. That cheap bike might save you cash today, but if it kills your trust in motorcycles altogether, that's a price the whole industry pays. The innovation dilemma. Let's get philosophical for a second. Real innovation is hard. It takes years of R&D, millions in investment, and endless trial and error. Japanese manufacturers like Honda and Yamaha didn't dominate by chance. They engineered their way to the top. Every feature we take for granted today, like ABS, fuel injection, or ride-by-wire, came from decades of relentless development. Now, here's the issue. When a company spends millions creating a groundbreaking design and someone else copies it for a fraction of the cost, it's not competition, it's free riding. Sure, some imitation pushes innovation forward, but when every new release is shadowed by a cut-price clone, the incentive to innovate dies. Why spend big to invest when someone else can reverse engineer your work and undercut your price? This isn't just bad for the big manufacturers, it's bad for all of us. Because when innovation slows down, the entire industry stagnates, and eventually, that means worse bikes for everyone. What this means for the future of riding. So, will cheap Chinese motorcycles ruin the industry? Not necessarily, but they could if we don't keep one thing in check. Standards. There's absolutely a place for budget bikes in the world. Not everyone can afford a $15,000 Triumph or a $20,000 BMW. Affordable, beginner-friendly motorcycles are vital to keeping the industry alive and accessible. But cheap should never mean disposable, and clones should never mean acceptable. If Chinese brands like CF Moto, Benelli, or QJ Motor continue improving build quality, creating original designs and building dealer networks, they'll earn their spot at the table. But if the majority of bikes hitting the West are just rebadged shadows of better machines, then yes, the damage could be lasting. Ultimately, it's up to riders to reward the good players and reject the hollow copies. Buy smart, ride often, and support brands no matter where they're based that put the work in to make something worth trusting your life with. There you have it. Cheap Chinese bikes might not be the apocalypse, but they're definitely shaking up the game. Some are improving, others are just cutting corners, but in the end, it's not just about price tags, it's about what kind of motorcycle world we want in 10 years. So, are you team innovation or team imitation? Have you owned a Chinese bike that surprised you, or one that fell apart after a few months? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear the good, the bad, and the wobbly. And if you found this breakdown helpful or brutally honest, hit that like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another deep dive into the two-wheeled world. Ride smart, buy smarter, and let's keep the industry moving forward, not backward. Thanks for watching.